All right, today the top 12 ways that you can fail using a BRS reactor. Learn from our mistakes. You couldn't keep it to 10. There's actually 12 that I think are super valuable mistakes that we've made, and you guys can learn from us. All right, so number one is actually my favorite.
Yeah, the mistake is buying this big giant one when that little guy right there will do.
Yeah, so if you're just using it for carbon, the little cartridge in here is actually the perfect size for a vast majority of tanks.
Oh yeah.
You really only need about a cup of carbon to filter most tanks. And so if you're just gonna fill it up, also it allows you to fill it top to bottom and it doesn't tumble or anything in there. So this little guy is actually adequate for like most people's tanks, and it's actually fits better as well. It's not particularly cheaper because the only couple bucks in cost of this actual plastic here. But for a lot of us, it's just the right tool for the right job. Number two, there's actually alternatives to this kind of tubing.
Yeah, so if that tubing is a little difficult, don't overlook or make the mistake of overlooking silicone tubing. There are upgrade kits that we have for these reactors, but you could put some silicone tubing on it, make it a little more flexible and easy to maneuver and take out for maintenance.
Yeah, so rigid tubing like this sometimes will also, if it touches something, transfer a little bit of noise. You can solve that with the silicone as well. And the way that you do it is put a stem by barb fitting into the output and then just put the silicone tubing on there. No noise, and it's a lot easier to route. Number three, you can mount it on the wall and have cords going all over, but there's another option.
Yeah, so a lot of people make the mistake of not realizing that you can just set this thing right in the sump. Once it fills with water, it'll hold itself down, but you don't have to use the brackets here.
Yeah, so imagine that the output is just about a couple inches long and I put the pump on it right here. I could set this in the sump and submerge it. I can put it anywhere and it'll still work. All right, number four, pretty commonly overlooked.
Yeah, the mistake are these things and not getting enough of them. Just, I mean, they're super cheap. Grab a couple extra ones, but having a couple extra ones will mean I can either hold my carbon down a little tighter or...
Yeah, you can stack them. But also, they deteriorate over time.
Yeah.
You know, they just kind of wear out and get smushed down. And so you don't want to find that out while you're changing out your media and then realize you don't have anything to hold it in place. So have a set of them sitting around waiting for that day so you don't have to like make a special order just for a couple of foam pads. All right, so number five, if you don't like rerouting cords all the time, you just want to be able to take it out and bring it to the sink really easy, don't overlook these guys.
Yeah, so the mistake is overlooking those colder connections. These things are like, you push the button, you pull them apart, and now I can take the whole reactor out without having to remove anything else. It's a heck of a lot easier sometimes than these push connect fittings.
The half-inch push connects on the Murloc tubes hold really good. They have really good seal.
Oh yeah.
But if you just keep taking them in and out all the time, it's a little hard. I much prefer to push a button, have it snap apart, and then just snap it back together again. For a few bucks, you can save yourself a lot of time. Number six is probably one of the bigger mistakes out there.
Yeah, so the mistake is not understanding when the dual reactor is the right choice or the right tool. For me personally, I don't have a use for them. I would just use a couple of small ones, but there are some instances where some people might need one.
So the dual reactors typically use the GFO on one side and carbon on the other side. And it's a good tool if you just really only have one pump to maintain. And you're going to use a lot of media. So you have a big tank and you want to fill the carbon like all the way up to the top, and you want to use a lot of GFO. However, it does require a little bit more tweaking because the carbon will get clogged with media, then the GFO stops tumbling. So you probably need to check on it weekly and adjust the flow to make sure it's working. I will tell you, for me, long term, just having two separate pumps and two separate reactors, the carbon, I don't really care about the flow, and it will require a lot less adjusting with the GFO if there isn't anything else in there clogging it up with debris from the tank. Number seven, you've heard this before, but I still see it all the time.
We've heard it hundreds of times, and the mistake is do not tumble your carbon. So, I mean, we've said it in every single carbon GFO or reactor video we've ever made. Don't let the carbon tumble.
You see it all the time, though. Tumbling the carbon looks cool. It must be better because it looks neat. Actually, all it do is just grinding itself up. So any two surfaces that are rubbing against each other all day long are just going to grind each other's surface down. So you don't want that with carbon. Don't tumble your carbon because all you're going to do is release little dusty fines of carbon into the tank. All right, so I know we're all waiting for the magic carbon fairy to come down and tell us answer this question, but it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, so the mistake is not understanding when that carbon is depleted. There's a lot of people that change it like twice a week or twice a month or once a month or what have you, but there is a test that you can do that makes this a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah, the water's yellow. So just turn off the lights in the room, turn off the lights on the tank, look through the long end of the tank. If the water is yellow, it is polluted.
Yeah.
You can see it with the naked eye. If I can see it with the naked eye, that means that not only is that yellow water depleting the light penetration, specifically the blue spectrum, and reducing the PAR often as much as 30%, but also it's that spectrum that is often making the corals look as nice as possible as well. So like for a couple bucks in carbon, you can make the tank look really pristine. It'll go like immediately use the carbon, and within a day or so, it'll go all the way back to that pristine blue look. So that's as simple as it gets. You can also do it in a white bucket test. Just when you're doing your water changes, look in the bucket. If the bucket looks pristine blue, water's good. If it looks yellow, fix it. All right, so the magic GFO fairy is going to come visit. Nope, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, same mistake here. Not understanding when your GFO is depleted. This one just takes a little test kit. So get a phosphate or phosphorus test kit, and if you start to see it go up, GFO is depleted.
There you go. It's as simple as that. So I'd strongly recommend the checker just because it's way easy to read, especially at the low ranges that you're looking for.
Yep.
So there is no magic number, because if he uses 2 cubes a day of food and I do 1, I'm gonna have to change it about half as often as he is. But if he's doing that in a 200-gallon tank and I'm doing it in a 100-gallon tank, everything just goes totally awry. So really, there is no magic answer to how often you need to change it. The answer is, well, A, if you start seeing a bunch of algae grow in the tank, but B, if your test kits are telling you it's time to change the media. Number 10, though, is actually really closely related to that, and an experience a lot of people just don't understand.
Yeah, so the mistake here is not understanding the difference between getting your levels down and keeping them there.
Yeah, so if you have really high phosphate levels, it actually might take a lot of GFO to bring it all the way down. So think about it this way. If I put in 30 days worth of food and my media lasts me roughly a month, well, what if I didn't have the media and I just done 30 days of food? It's going to take the same amount of media, however, it's going to happen all at once.
Right.
So if you're trying to get already high levels down, it's actually going to take a decent amount of media. Whereas for those people that already have them down, you're just keeping them there and finding in that small addition of food each day, they'll actually last a really long time. All right, so number 11, same tool used differently to different purposes.
Yeah, so a mistake here is not understanding the difference between treatment and prevention of algae when using your GFO. There's a couple different approaches to each one.
Yeah, so if you are trying to treat an existing problem, there's algae all over the tank, it looks like crap, people are telling you to tear it down because it looks terrible, and you just want to solve that, I'm going to take a more aggressive approach. I'm probably going to look for as close to 0 phosphate as possible. I'm going to probably manually remove as much of that algae as I possibly can. I'm going to take a way more aggressive approach. If I'm actually just trying to prevent it, well, I don't actually want 0, all the time, and chasing the 0.03 fairy is really hard as well. So I might just change it periodically, and I'm just making sure that it doesn't get sky high. So just use a little bit of GFO periodically, maybe even just mix it in with your carbon, and you don't have to tumble it that way because you're keeping it separate. And now I'm just a lot less effort going into it, and I'm allowing a little bit of phosphorus in the tank or phosphate in the tank, and in turn, I'm just not chasing that fairy, and it's a lot easier to do. All right, so number 12, my first tank was totally guilty of this.
Yeah, me too. And the mistake is using GFO to the point that it works too well, where again, you're in that 0 range. That was one of my first mistakes, is thinking that 0 nitrates, 0 phosphates was the ticket, and I did everything I could, including GFO, to keep those levels down, but actually turns out that I was wrong.
Yeah, so you can actually starve off your corals when you're looking at 0. But my experience was actually totally different than his, in the essence that I wasn't actually monitoring nitrate. I was actually just using this to keep the algae at bay in my first tank. and it worked really, really well.
Yeah.
Like, I never had algae in the tank, and it gave me this like false sense that what I was doing was right. My water change schedule kind of like went down. The tank still looked awesome, didn't have any algae, and my maintenance kind of deteriorated over time. What I didn't know is I was only solving half the problem. And visually the tank looks awesome, so it's telling me that I'm doing something right. Meanwhile though, the nitrate level is skyrocketing, and like just getting higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And then eventually, one day, you kind of forget to change out your GFO and the phosphate starts to rise. Boom, algae out of everywhere.
Yeah.
So like, make sure that you understand that you're only solving half of the problem from adding your food using this, and make some effort to think about how you're going to solve that with nitrate as well. All right, so if you only heard one thing today, let it be this.
Yeah, for me, it's don't go big and go home, meaning use the small one when you have to.
You stole that one from me. So here's the deal. I'll take the second one, is use those colder push connects, not just on reactors, but really anything that you need to remove.
Yeah.
And you don't want to reroute cords all the time. So if you don't want to pull out the whole pump or wiggle off all the stem adapters and all
They're
that stuff, just push a button, take it off. You can take it and maintenance it. So use the small guy, use the colder push connects, but if you want to learn more about all of this stuff, you can do it right here.